Drew here, and I have been asked by a few people to come up with a short demonstration video on how to use Hauptwerk's multi-channel and advanced audio routing capabilities, and to try to show everyone how simple it is to actually set these up. Um, I am not going to go into any details about your interfaces or, buffering and latency or any of that kind of stuff. Instead, I'm merely going to show you as quickly and as simply as I can how to get audio flowing through Hauptwerk to whatever configuration you want, because ultimately this is as customizable as as it could possibly be. And that's the beauty of this thing, that we have this wonderful tool. It looks very intimidating at first, but it's actually quite simple once you understand how it's laid out. And it's similar to a gigantic analog mixing console that you've ever seen at a concert or anything. With all the knobs and buttons, it looks extremely complicated until you realize that basically it's, channel one just replicated a whole bunch of times. And once you understand that, then it actually becomes a lot simpler. And this is a feature that a lot of people, myself included, really were looking forward to, going from version 4 to version 5 or 6, because you no longer have to load organs each time that you want to change audio configurations, which is really wonderful. As you see here, I am just using this demo sample set from Sonos Paradisi, which is a really cool set, but I'm just using this because it's simple, it's small, it's easy to load, and it will sort of you could take what I'm going to show you here and replicate, or expound upon this, to let your imagination run wild. So do bear in mind that what I'm going to show you is not meant to be a template in any way, shape, or form. This is merely showing you how things flow through here so that you can get creative and do your own thing, and what works for you and what works for your setup. Because none of us, I can almost guarantee, have the exact same setup. That's the beauty of it. Everybody can manipulate this and change this to suit their needs, which is an amazing and a wonderful and powerful tool, that we all have access to. The first thing that I want to point out is that inside of Hauptwerk, if you go to View, Large Floating Control Panels for this organ, and then go to Audio Mixer Routing and Voicing Panning Settings, and you have this little menu here that pops up. For me, this works really well, and I like this. I'm going to flip over right quick and show you a screenshot of something else that I came up with a while back. If you basically follow these numbers, this is the order in which we are going to go through the process of setting all of this up. And it's the way that I would recommend that you do it. You can find a high resolution of this image on my website, on the Hauptwerk forums, should you ever need to reference this again. And I'll also do my best to put this in a friendly link and share this somewhere so that you can have this in printed form as well. The first thing that we want to do is understand basically how audio flows through the software. But we're actually going to start over here. We're actually going to start at the end, start at the result of whatever your system is. When this is, whatever conglomeration of speakers that you have, whatever configuration of headphones and subwoofers, and maybe you have front channels and rear channels or side channels, or maybe you have, 8 pairs of speakers on the left-hand side and 8 pairs of speakers on the right-hand side, or whatever that is. This is basically where we're going to start. We're going to start with understanding and telling your interface, what speaker configuration that you have to work with. And so that's why we're going to start right here with step number 1 on audio device. As you can see right here plugged into my laptop, I have a Semantic Audio LP16, which is a cool little interface. And um, again, audio buffer size, stuff like that. I'm not going to cover any of that. But you can select whatever your interface is right here in this drop-down list. Um, and you will see that it will populate for you all the channels that you have available. Hauptwerk will populate this automatically based on the device that you set. So you notice how at number 19 through 20, it says that this channel is not available on this device. So that's great. So the best thing for you to do, in my opinion, is to go through here and give friendly names to whatever your physical speakers are. Now, this is different upon everybody's situation. You may have, like I'm calling out here, the Behringer 2031A left 1, right 1, left 2, right 2, left 3, right 3, so on and so forth. So if you had multiple pairs and whatever your configuration is, or maybe you had you just wanted to name this speaker 1, speaker 2, speaker 3, so on and so forth, or whatever. Or if you wanted to get I would keep these naming conventions personally. I would keep these very much defined to what the either speaker model is, or the speaker model and its position in the real world. So if this was Behringer left number 1, Behringer right number 1. So this would be the stereo pair, basically, left side, right side, so on and so forth. Whatever you want to call it. I'm going to go back to my original sort of naming convention because I'm most familiar with it at the moment. And forgive me, I did not rehearse this at all. I am completely making this up as we go. Right. Okay. And so let's say, in this interface of mine, let's say I don't currently, but let's say I'm using all 16 speakers. And this particular interface also has output 17 and 18, which it designates as headphones automatically, which is great. So this is technically an 18 channel interface, not a 16 channel interface. But output 17 and 18 are automatically assigned to the headphone jack, which is cool because, as it turns out, I do want a headphone mix, so that works out great. But go down through here and label all of your speakers however you want them. And in my case here on output number 15 and output number 16, I am going to configure this to use a pair of Golden Ear Triton 2s, which are a full range speaker cabinet. So they play all the way down to 16 hertz, all the way through 20,000 hertz. So they're great full range speakers, so they can handle the entire pedal division on their own. So basically, I'm going to set these up to be used for pedals, and we'll have a mix for headphones, which is for everything. So once you get all of your speakers named, we just hit OK. Okay, now that we have all of that set up, we are going to go to our next step, which is here, the mixer and reverb. Now, when I first started hammering my way through this, I was very confused by this screen. I am not going to lie. And it took me a while to really sort of wrap my head around what is going on here. And forgive me for a moment while I clear a couple of things out so that way we start with a fresh template here. Now, you will notice that if you're doing this for the first time, Hauptwerk will have different names in here for these, basically following this kind of template. And I really understand why they did this, but I think it also kind of adds to the confusion a little bit, because you might be telling yourself that all of this stuff is just permanently hardwired a certain way. As it turns out, it's not. All of this is 100% completely customizable, and and you have every ability to take advantage of this. So the best way I can describe this for you right now is um, all 8 of these buses are basically are going to end up being mix downs of all of the other stuff that happens. So irrespective of how many channels you have, let's say you have 2 channels, or let's say that you have, 50 different audio channels, doesn't matter. Or let's say you have, a 40 rank organ, or you have a 5 rank organ, whatever's basically happening upstream of this. Ultimately, what you're creating here in these 8 mix buses are mix downs of all of that stuff. Um, and so this comes in handy and is very useful for, say, a headphone mix, right? Anytime there's a situation where you want to take the whole of everything, or a big section of anything perhaps, um, and you want to mix those things down into a single output, or perhaps a pair of outputs, which very often would be subwoofers and headphones. That's a um, very common mix down that you would need. But this could also be, let's say I wanted to mix every single thing down into an ambient pair. Maybe I have a pair of speakers somewhere out in the back of the room somewhere that I want to create a very soft mix down, and I want to send things to that, right? This is where you would do that. Here you're basically, again, you're creating a mix down of all of the other stuff that's happening upstream. Um, so the most common, I would say, for most people would be a headphone mix and a subwoofer mix. So in a headphone mix, for example, if we're going to set this up for this, sorry, I went a little quick there. If you come down here to audio output and channels, if you'll notice, here is the list of all the audio channels. And again, it looks very confusing. But if you'll remember, when we set up our audio device over here, right, we set channel 17 and 18, phones left, phones right. So here is where you will assign the physical output of this mixdown, whatever that is. And you can change all sorts of other settings in here. I'm not going to worry too much about that. The other big one that I think a lot of people would use is if you wanted to add an impulse response reverb to this particular mixdown, you would do that here. And you can fiddle with all these settings to your heart's content. And basically the same happens here with subs. So this is the same thing, just repeated over and over and over again. So for, say, our subwoofer, it stands to reason that you would want to use the same reverb if you choose to add one. And then again, you will assign it to the physical output that you want it to use on your interface, which you created again in the previous step over here. And as I said before, I have a pair of Triton 2s, and you see how Hauptwerk actually populates those titles, Triton 2 left, Triton 2 right, that you input on that previous screen. This is the reason why I like to work from the output all the way back to the input, because Hauptwerk will keep all of these naming conventions in place for you, which is really great. And then you can create more mixes here, um, up to 8 mixes on this. And I would like to point out at this moment, I will cover some more of this later, but for the moment, for the time being, stick to mixer preset 1, these first 8. Hauptwerk does have multiple mixer presets, which is really cool. But for the time being, let's just get our heads wrapped around, what this is, and we will expound upon this further in a moment. Now, so now that you've created, basically what we've created is this here in that last little step there. And again, what you're ultimately doing here is taking all of this stuff upstream that we've yet to create, and you're going ahead and creating this step. And you see what's happening here is it's taking all of that audio content, all of those pipes, all of those ranks, all of those sounds, and we're telling it to sum all of those things together and send it to a pair of headphones, or in this case, send it to the subwoofer. All right. And the next step involved in this is where I really got confused the first time, is how do we get things to route up to this point? Well, if you scroll all the way to the bottom of this list, and if you look very closely down here, it says advanced items. And if you click this little tick box there, it drops down. And now you can keep scrolling on down. Now notice here how we have mixer preset 1. Remember, for the time being, we want to stay on mixer preset 1. You'll understand why shortly. Here, we want to basically we want to assign these routes or these buses to physical outputs that we have available to us that are not, and this is important, that are not mix downs. In other words, what we're assigning here are actually the direct outputs to the speakers that we have available to us. So we created the mixes, those are taken care of. Now we need to create the path between here all the way out to our primary speakers, or what would be our main audio channels. So here I would tend to name these something, fairly generic, honestly, but you can give these friendly names here. And I just called these, mains 1, left and right pair, mains 2, left and right, mains 3, left and right, so on and so forth. And just like the others, if you go here to audio output device, you can select which physical output that we want to route this bus to. And then you can also add your reverb. Now, another important step here is you want to, this is where you would also assign what gets routed up to these mixdowns. And you do that by, you can select multiples or you can do them individually. You come down here and say send to master mix buses. And notice here you have headphones and subs. And that's what we created here. Again, this is why I like to work backwards, because if I change this name here from headphones to something else, right, it will populate that down here in this list. So this is how you know what am I routing. So think of this as flowing. Audio comes in here on the left-hand side, flows into here, right, comes down here, and we're telling it now we need you to route back up here and come up to there. And so you would be telling, in any whatever combination you wish, how to route these buses into these mix buses. And once you're done with that setup, you can click OK. So in my particular setup here, I have a 16-channel audio interface, and channels 17 and 18 are routed to the headphones, 15 and 16 are going to the subs. So that stands to reason then that I have an additional 14 channels. But remember, these are stereo. So remember, this is one bus, but it's 2 channels, a left and a right. And so I've assigned these to number 1 and 2. Output number 2 is 3 and 4, but you notice it keeps my a naming convention there, so on and so forth. Okay, now we are going to take a look at our third step, which is this mixer bus groups right here. It is in this section that I personally go about grouping various ranks or timbres, or maybe if you're in the theater organs, maybe this is where the percussions, or you would group the toys, or here's where you'd really start making groupings of voices. Um, and you could write an entire dissertation on this subject here, and what is the best way of going about grouping different sounds and grouping different voices, so on and so forth. But there's no simple answer to this, and of course the number of speakers that you have, the types of speakers that you have, so on and so forth. All of this is really going to um, play into what your an eventual setup is going to be. And so there's no simple answer to this. If you aren't comfortable figuring all of this out, there are many people out there like myself who are glad to offer suggestions, first one thing and another, or experiment, see what works for you. Um, but typically, it might be advisable to do something. Maybe you group things by division. So maybe you create groups here that are great, swell, and pedal. Or perhaps you want to do group things by flutes. And maybe you wanted strings in this group, and maybe you want percussions in this group, and maybe you want a group that's just called noise, or so on and so forth. But here's where you would go about, or where I think it's advisable to create these different groups or families of how you're going to group sounds into speakers. And again, there are a million ways of going about this, and Hauptwerk affords you, look at this, under Mixer Preset 1 still, all of these various groupings, and I'm just fascinated by all of this, and it's truly loads of fun. But for the sake of this small chaplet Spanish collection here, I'm just going to make a couple of very simple groups here, and I'm going to say that this is flutes. I'll just call these 8-foot flutes. Here I'm going to say reeds that are 8 foot, and maybe here I will say this is mixtures, mutations. Sorry, I do have a new MacBook Pro with the butterfly keys, and it is quite pesky with the double taps sometimes, so bear with me. Now, mind you, you can make as many or as few of groups as you want. And I think, and for others, we'll just create these random groups here. Now, what you need to figure out now is, okay, which of the previous um, um, mixer bus do I want to route these to? In other words, which of the speakers do we want to route to? Now, if you notice right here, these are the mixer buses that you created in the previous step here when you went to the little advanced tab and you clicked that little tick down box and it expanded all that stuff down there. So now you're sending these to those right there. And you can select these in any combination, of course, that you wish. So if you wanted your flutes to go to mains speakers, main group or main stereo pair 1, left and right, but we also wanted it to go to group 2, so on and so forth. And then I want my reeds to go, let's say here. want my mixtures and mutations to go here, and all my other stuff to perhaps go there. All right. You see how that works. Again, this can be as simple or as complex as your setup or system requires. And then just hit OK there when you're done. So now you've created basically your groups and families of how you want to um, mix and combine those sounds. So now you come up here to step number 4 in this rank routing button here. Now, if you're familiar with Hauptwerk version 4, which is what I'm still using actually at Greenwood United Methodist, this looks sort of familiar because it works very similarly. Now here, along the left-hand side, you have all of the ranks and samples that are available in that particular sample set. And what you'll do here is say, you'll click on the rank that you want. And now, if you'll notice rank routing, notice that the groups, the families that I created over here in step number 3 have now populated their names right here. Again, all the more reason as to why I find it much, much simpler to work backwards in setting all of this stuff up. And so forgive me, but I'm going to very, very crudely set this up. And I'm going to say that I do believe I'm getting all of these correct. I want these reads to basically go to that group. And once you set these, here is where now you can change the various routing algorithms. This is actually a really, really, really wonderful feature that myself and I know a lot of other Hauptwerk enthusiasts have really wanted for years, is the ability to change all of this kind of stuff without having to reload the entire organ every time. And this is a godsend, and I cannot wait to actually get this running at Greenwood UMC, where we have 56 audio channels. The problem is I work all the time, and I really don't have a ton of time to devote to the process of going through all of this again. But I will say that this is an amazing update and an amazing feature that I've really looked forward to for a very long time. And if you're not sure what all of these different algorithms do, consult the forums. There's a lot of good discussion on what all of this is. But for the sake of this little conversation, I'm going to just show you what I'm just adding things to, so on and so forth. So here's where you just go about and now you assign them to your various groupings or families that you made. And once you get all of these kind of figured out and routed however you want, then ultimately that's about it. Now, you can route to multiple perspectives and things if you want to as well. So you can actually route these various stops or even the direct or the diffuse, whatever. You can route them to all sorts of other groups simultaneously, which is really cool. It's an advanced feature. If when you sit down and play with this, maybe you want to do with that. And of course, you can split the bass part of the ranks off as well. But again, for the sake of this little tutorial, I'm not going to go into all that stuff because I'm sure this video has already ended up being much longer than any of us really cared to listen to. So once you get these sort of routed, however you wish, let me go through here right quick and make sure I didn't skip a couple, and I may have routed some of these to the wrong groups, at least by name, but you at least get the gist of what I'm on about here. Once you get done with that, hit OK. And then one of the other cool things that you can do, I mean, of course, by now at this point, you'd be ready to start playing. But one of the other things that's kind of neat here, let's see if I can get my screens kind of side by side so we can watch this. You'll notice that there's the little green light here, so to speak. So if I have basically done my job correctly, should be able to come over here and play a sound, and you'll notice that when I click a key, you see that the audio is actually routing. So everything is passing through like it's supposed to. This is a way that you can actually check your routing internally inside the software to make sure that things are in fact routing like they're supposed to. And so now you see how they're lighting up based off of the combination of whatever stops I'm playing, whatever stops I have drawn, rather, and whatever key that I'm playing. This should pretty much cover it for this little tutorial. I'm sure I have omitted some very important details. Oh, in fact, yes, I overlooked one very important detail. Glad I thought about this just now. One of the amazing features that was built into version 5 and version 6 that a lot of Hauptwerk enthusiasts were really looking for, like I said, was the ability to change these audio routings on the fly without having to unload, set all of the routing, and then recompile and reload the organ. So everything I have just shown you, everything in this entire video, can be replicated 8 times. So you can actually create 8 different presets or 8 different combinations of all of this various routing by clicking this little change button here and then telling the software which mixer preset that we want to use. So remember how I told you to do everything on preset 1? Well, remember, now you can actually, if you wanted to go through and create an entirely different routing scheme, you can use mixer preset 2. And when you come to this, starting with the mixer reverb tab, and then again here, this is where your mixer preset 2 comes into play, or mixer preset 3. So you see what I told you about in the very beginning, that this is similar to a mixing console, an old analog mixing desk, when you're basically doing the same thing just multiple times. So here is the exact same thing as this. It's just on preset number 2. And likewise here, this is just on preset number 3. So when you create your various groupings, you maybe want to try a completely different setup or a completely different configuration here, so on and so forth. And that's where these the various mixer preset prefix here comes into play. And that's a really, really cool feature that I really look forward to playing with at Greenwood UMC. Because I mean, with the 56 channels that we have there, I mean, I can play with this for days and days and days on end. And perhaps that's one of the reasons why I haven't begun to play with it yet, is because I would probably never stop playing with it. And that's one of the beauties of this wonderful thing that we've been blessed with, called Hauptwerk. So I hope you've enjoyed all of this. I hope you've gotten something out of it. Please feel free to always visit my website at www.drewworthen.com, and I will do my best to post more of these little video tutorials and some other helps along the way. And you're always welcome to message me and contact me through the website. I love to talk about this kind of stuff, and I love to help people with this. And I hope to be of more benefit to everyone in the future. So feel free to write to me, and I'd love to talk to you. Thank you very much.